Welcome to our weekly book club episode here at Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. If you're new to the podcast, don't panic. There was no required reading to show up and listen in. We will explain momentarily how our book club works. But first, I am your host, Meagan, and my bookworm co-host is...
Hi, I'm Amanda.
Welcome. Our current book club selection that we've been working on for many weeks is Differently Wired by Deborah Reber. But we're almost there.
Yes, yeah, we have loved this book, but we are almost done. Of course, that doesn't mean that you can't just join in now. You can join this episode if it's your first one. If you want, you can go back and listen to the series from the start. You can truly approach it any way that works for you. Some people like to read along with us. Awesome. With this book, we totally encourage that. We actually enjoyed it. We don't always enjoy all the books that we read. But other folks choose to just tune in and simply listen to kind of our digest version of the book and kind of follow along with us and think about what we're thinking about. And either way, we're just thrilled you're here.
That we are. So since we've only got one more week of this book, it's time to stop procrastinating and pick a book for our next book club series of episodes. Since many of us are struggling because it's May, I will sign myself up for that struggle bus. My head's going to be on the desk. I'm going to be drooling on my desk by the time we're done here. That whole meme about Mother's Day being a day for self-care in the middle of May being a type of cruel joke is pretty spot on. We're all pretty fried at this point. We are going with something different. We are changing it up a little bit. So we've picked a handful of quick reads that often get recommended in secular groups as a way to teach and learn about religion from a secular perspective. That's our jam. We will not be sitting here proselytizing and preaching hellfire and brimstone. Yeah. So we are going to start with The Belief Book by David McAfee later this month. Actually, we're going to read all three of his books in the series. So if you want to order them online and just pay for shipping once, or if you're putting in requests through the library and you want to request them, you might need to interlibrary loan them or something like that. We are entirely with you if you can find them at a small bookstore online or a used bookstore. We love that. Books are always so much more enjoyable when we can shop with confidence, knowing that we're helping tank Amazon stock just a little bit more every time we order a book and click, click, click.
All right, so today we will be covering tilts 15 and 16 in Differently Wired. And like Meagan mentioned, we will be wrapping this book up next week by finishing the last two, tilts 17 and 18. So let's dive in. Yeah, tilt 15 is titled Recognize How Your Energy Affects Your Child.
Yeah, I'm all about this chapter. We've talked about this before. I have a very energy sensitive child. And so, yeah, this book, I was just like, all throughout this tilt. So there's a section here on 226 where she talks about the fact that when her kiddo would ramp up and have one of his dysregulated episodes where he'd experience rage or big emotions, she said, instead of emotionally checking out, bracing myself for the attack, or energetically matching his intensity, I tried something different. I softened. And that, I've talked about it before, changed my entire dynamic with my now 13-year-old almost a decade ago.
Yeah, no, totally. The very next kind of paragraph after that, she says, I calmly walked over to Asher, crouched down to eye level, and silently folded him into my arms. I held him tight and breathed slowly. And just kind of talking through this, I think, for me, it's that thing. I have done this. It's made a big difference in our homes. But I also think that it's so so opposite of what a lot of people think you should do with a kiddo who is having these big meltdowns or these big emotions. And it's a hard thing to really wrap your head around, especially if you're new to parenting and you're new to this idea. For me, it was at our 5-year well visit when I've kind of talked about that in our regular podcast before. Like, I was with the pediatrician and I don't know what to do. Like, oh my God, we've had all these crazy things happening at home. Like, what should I? And she was like, he is just as scared and what the heck just happened after these great big outbursts and meltdowns as you are. And you're the grown up. So it's totally okay to scoop him up into your lap and just give him a really good cuddle and be like, it's okay. I've got you. And that was I mean, it was just like transformative for our relationship and where we were at and how we were getting through things. So I think this is such a good point to start off this book club episode with. It's like this, it works, right? And it's not just some hippy dippy idea or crazy book. Like, it came from my pediatrician. It's come from the author. We both tried it. It helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing in our house. Completely changed. I don't know where we would both be today if we had approached with this method. And to this day, that's the energy that he needs in order to calm. And even his favorite teacher at out school knows that. And that's exactly how he handles it. And it's created this beautiful relationship for him. There's a quote here. Some of my page numbers are off. I noticed while I was adding my notes after you added your notes. I was like, oh, I'm glad you put the section headers because that's not where my stuff is. Energy affects. So there's a section here called Energy Affects Our Kids All the Time. And I loved this part that says, ask anyone raising a child with sensory processing issues, and they'll tell you that these kids can read a room better than any seasoned politician. I was like, that is so true. My kiddo can sometimes read the room. It's a little bit off. Sometimes he finds people who are very, very friendly, overtly friendly. He finds them a little distrustful sometimes because he struggles to believe that it's genuine. And I've met the same people and I'm like, no, I think that's just genuinely who they are as a person. But in his world, there is definitely a line of too friendly. But yeah, he can totally read a room. And so I thought, yeah, that's something to pay attention to. It's interesting because sometimes there are these reels on Instagram and stuff, and it'll be stuff about, yeah, okay, I have ADHD and I might be late for work sometimes, or I might miss a deadline or this, that, and the other thing. But if you need to interview a candidate, I need to be in that room because I can get to the bottom of who that person is so quickly and sift through all the clever answers or the posturing or whatever it is and read that person so quickly. And it's so true. It's one of the gifts of a lot of neurodivergent people.
Yeah, that's it. I can usually tell a person, right? Like pretty quickly. And I have learned with time and age that there are people I meet. In fact, one of my closest friends when we lived in Europe, the first time I met her, I was like, I don't particularly like her. I don't really get along with her, but I'm not going to say anything because I have a feeling that we're probably going to end up being really good friends. Right. Like, and then there was someone else that I met through my husband's work that I was like, you be real careful with him because I am 100% certain that is a snake in the grass. Like, you be careful there. And it was true. That's exactly how it shook out, like, yep.
So true. Yep. So there's a quote on the next page that I just absolutely love. It's on page 226. I don't know if that's correct or not, but it's still in this Energy Affects Our Kids All the Time. And it says, capable of absorbing others' energy, they are excellent emotional barometers, not to mention mirrors for us as their parents and what we're feeling. And kids on the autism spectrum are not immune to energetic hypersensitivity. Despite the myth that autistic people lack empathy, research by Henry and Camilla Markham of the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Lausanne shows that the opposite may in fact be true. People with autism spectrum disorders such as Asperger's, which of course this book is 10 years old, we don't particularly use that term anymore, don't lack empathy at all. In fact, they feel others' emotions too intensely to cope. And then Camilla Markham, who herself is Markram, sorry, I was pronouncing that wrong, herself is autistic, explains, I can walk into a room and feel what everyone is feeling. The problem is that it all comes in faster than I can process it. And so imagine in a young person's body how overwhelming that would be and their inability to identify why they're feeling overwhelmed and express that to you at the same time. But it was interesting because this is actually the reason that my youngest kiddo's diagnosis came so late, was the fact that he was an empath. That they were like, well, he's an empath. That's so weird for autism. And I was like, I'm just telling you what I think, I'm like, it is or it isn't. You're the doctor, you decide. But I'm like, I'm telling you right now that he can feel every ounce of energy that is anywhere around him. And it's exhausting for him. And then finally we had one doctor who was like, no, that's not a disqualifier. It happens. So now,
that thing, like, is it really that unusual?
Yeah.
Or have you just read it differently? So yeah, that for me, if you're reading along in the hard copy book, was on page 227. And a
Thank
little
you.
bit further down on that same page, I pulled out a quote where she says, when we're not consciously regulating our energy, we can unwittingly escalate situations, in part because of a type of brain cell called mirror neurons, cells that lead us to mimic behavior and feelings we see in others. And it, like, just one of those total aside things, like I should have known this term because I am 100% that person that cries when anyone else is even struggling. Like, they don't have to be crying. If they're struggling, I'm going to cry for them. I'm going to wince in pain, like all of that. So I should have known mirror neurons. But also, for me, this section and what she's talking about, this is one of those things, we all know it, right? We all know this. It's so much easier to feed into the situation and to give back what you're getting. This idea of like escalating instead of de-escalating. But it's so worth working on. It's so worth being the one who's able to de-escalate.
Yeah. I have a quote a little bit further down that page. We just basically highlighted this whole chapter between us, which I love. So it said, so when we get angry or yell or lose control during difficult moments with our kids, guess what's going to happen? Our child's mirror neurons rise up to meet ours. More anger ensues, the situation intensifies, and it takes us longer to get to a place of calm and resolution. Then we blame ourselves for not responding in the quote unquote perfect way and for making the situation worse. Our kids experience post-conflict shame and the cycle is complete, but it doesn't have to be that way. And I think it's so interesting because there is this thing about, it goes back to what we talked about with the hugging at the beginning. I have a friend who's in this cycle endlessly for years. And that's been my thing, is like, you have to be the one to soften. You have to be the one. And it's like, but I can't soften because they take advantage or they lie or they do this or they do that. And it's like, okay, but that's the cycle that's been created. And you have to be the one to break that cycle. The kid is not going to do it, right? The kid is just counting the days till they're out of your house and they can do whatever they want. You have to be the one to do it. And you'll both be so much better off long-term if you can do that. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it has to start with the parents.
Yeah, that's it. It's unfair and unrealistic and all kinds of other unwords to expect it to be the kid that does those things. It's hard, right? There's no getting around it. It's hard. We're not going to sit here and say like, oh, it's easy, just do this, but it's worth doing it. Mm-hmm. So the next section is called using your energy for good. Neither one of us actually highlighted any quotes in that, but use your energy for good. It's not that complicated. Then we get to the next section after that called pinpoint your emotional triggers.
Yeah, I think my quote is on page 229, but you'll tell me because Kindle it does its own thing. So the whole section is her talking about, for us, the things that kind of set us off and get us spiraling with sadness, anger, stress, anxiety, whatever it might be. And one of the examples that she gives is, it says we might notice that our anxiety peaks during certain times of the year, such as high school graduation season, a time when our Facebook news feeds are filled with photos of happy students transitioning to bright futures. And it's so interesting because I remember a post like this, I think from last year, where somebody posted about graduation and worrying that they basically FOMO, right? That they were going to be devastated, that they wouldn't have this experience and this and that and the other thing. And they were like, how do you deal with that? And I was like, I do not have that, because I have been homeschooling long enough to look at that photo and say, yeah, that's a lovely photo. In the meantime, that kid has been so stressed about finals and testing for the last month. That kid has stayed up writing papers until 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning because they go to school at the crack of dawn. They have sports practice afterwards. They come home, they have dinner. Then they're up all night working on hours and hours of homework. That kid, every morning, it's dragging them out of bed by their toenails because they're exhausted because of the schedule that they're keeping that doesn't respect the circadian rhythm of teenagers. And so you're like, come on, you're going to miss the bus. And then they miss the bus. And you're like, well, now I freaking have to drive you to school, right? And every day is starting with that. The number of times that they've forgotten things at home that you have to run up to the school to drop off, the amount of social conflicts that have happened and things like that all throughout high school. And it's like, That's all behind that photo. And that's the photo that the people have chosen to share. They're never going to tell you that every single morning is pure hell in their household trying to get out the door on time. So no, I don't have that thing. So if you are struggling with that, I would just totally remind you to be like, this is one moment. This is one single moment. And how did that person get there? It wasn't shiny and happy and all smiley.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good point, right? I totally see your point. The fact that there's like 90% crap that is necessary behind the scenes to get to that like 10% awesome and fun. I do still struggle with the fact that I want that 10% awesome and fun. And I want that 10% to go along with like maybe max 20% crap and, an extra 70% like good and fun. And I'm not entirely sure how we get there. I think that can be a struggle. And that's like just a general life struggle, right? Like how do we have more good than bad and then still also get the good that everyone else has got? Like, yeah, it's a whole thing. It's complicated. It's not easy.
I mean, we just had that. I forget if it was you and I are in all the same Facebook groups, so you might have seen it. There was a picture of a promposal. Did you see that? It was the U-Haul truck that was like, "Will you haul my ass to prom?" was like the promposal. And somebody was like, which first of all, I feel like the pressure that puts on the person who's being promposed to.
But for all of them, right? Like these promposals are bigger than my like actual proposal, like my wedding proposal, like my marriage proposal. Like these, like that, yes. But yeah, it's okay, go on.
Too much, right?
Yeah.
And so somebody posted this thing that they had seen in the Facebook group and they said, is anybody else sad that our kids won't have this? And it just happened to be last week when we were in Budapest. And one of the reasons that we went to that particular World Schooling pop-up hub was because it was prom week. And so, yeah, we did the thing beforehand. I mean, there was the whole picking out of the dress and what are you wearing and how are you doing your hair? And I have a girl, so there was all of that. And there were plenty of boys. Oh my gosh, there was one boy who showed up who looked like an extra out of Peaky Blinders. He totally decked out. He was so handsome. He had a pocket watch. What do you call that thing? A pocket watch, right? When it's on the little chain. Yeah. Okay. I just had like a brain fart there for a second. Then you had kids that showed up totally casual because the dress code was whatever is comfortable for you, whatever is fancy in your world. So you could totally show up in joggers and a t-shirt and have fun. There was absolutely nothing wrong with that. Everybody got to be themselves. And so we did the whole thing beforehand where we went to the park and we took pictures and it was different friend groups and there were some people who had dates and all that kind of stuff. And it was on a boat. So we all went down to the dock and waved bon voyage and we had pictures galore and all that stuff. It still exists, but I don't have to do all the other stuff in front of it. And it literally cost me, okay, we went to Budapest. So I was going to say it didn't cost me much, but we do these homeschooling pop-ups anyway, right? We just went to this one. The ticket to the prom was 50 euros. And I think her outfit was maybe 125 euro. So yeah, proms in the US through the public school thing. And then they're going to multiple proms. It's bananas. So yeah, I'm like, I do not feel, because most of what there is exists in our world too. It's just, we get to achieve it without some of the that goes with the other shiny, happy pictures that are out there. So if you ever need help shaking that mentality, come chat with me. We'll shake it off as Queen Tay Tay says, shake it off.
And I do agree. I do think it's hard. We talk about a lot. We talk about it a lot. And we did talk about it in just the episode that dropped on Tuesday. So you can go listen to that. But it is hard to let go of some of those things, especially because like we mentioned in the previous episode, and we mentioned in the episode we did about like privilege and homeschooling, it is harder. And for me, when I think about a lot of these things and like, well, my kiddo isn't going to get them through public school where it's easy and he just stays after school or it's just part of that. And it requires me find things and drive him to things. And I can't drive him to things. I can only drive a couple times a week. And so we have to be really careful and specific about what those things are. And then how much time can my husband take off work to drive us and these kinds of things. There's a lot of, again, privilege and ability and things, whether it's a physical health kind of thing where you can't drive your kid to it so they can't be as involved and participate, or a money thing where, you just can't afford to have them in these things where they make the connections with the friends and they can go to their local prom, or your local prom ticket is stupidly expensive. And so
They
you
are
just can't make
crazy.
it work.
Yeah.
Like there's just a lot of those kinds of things. And so, it is hard, but I do think that it is 100% worth remembering that there's a lot of other that goes into it. And if you do a giant promposal and she says no because somehow you missed the boat and she's already going with someone else, like a homeschool kid doesn't have to go back to school the next day and have all 400 kids in his high school, or, if you're in an even bigger school than that, like knowing that he like totally messed that up. I mean, like that's a level of like, oh gosh, I'm so glad that we don't have to actually deal with that part either.
Yeah.
Okay. So in this same section, again, she's still talking about this. The idea is like pinpoint your emotional triggers. And we're so quick to pinpoint our kiddos' emotional triggers, but we do have to actually pay attention to our own, because so often our own baggage causes problems that we're not even thinking about. And so she kind of wraps this section up with a quote that I really liked. She said, "What are your buttons? Chances are they are the same things today that they were 20 years ago. Our baggage runs deep. Get curious about what types of situations trigger those deep emotional responses and start recognizing that they're about you, not your child." I'm always working on those for myself. And I'm 100% certain there are ones that I've missed or ones that'll still come up, ones that I haven't completely sorted through yet, right? Baggage takes a lot of time and effort to actually sort through it. If only it was as easy as unpacking a suitcase. But yeah.
That's
good.
not easy either. I've been home since Sunday. It's still sitting here on the freaking floor.
I am 100% the person, if left to my own devices, I don't unpack it until it's time to repack it for the next trip. And I usually pack the day that I'm leaving. Like, I'm like, oh, I have to go to the airport in a few hours. I should pack, which actually means I should unpack my suitcase and then pack. So
that's about what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But the thing is, our housekeeper will come while we're away just one time, just to kind of, we're a very hairy household. Like the amount of hair that is, there's like tumbleweeds of hair that end up on the floor. So we do like some maintenance, but she usually comes after we leave and she'll, do like a nice deep clean of the kitchen and all that kind of stuff. So there's like a judgment factor where I'm like, I can't just like dump everything that's in the suitcase out on the floor and pack my bag and leave. I'm like, I'm going to feel obligated to put that away so at least doesn't judge me. So like, okay. I thought of something based upon what you said, but it's gone now. Anyway, if you listen to Tuesday's episode, we record these on the same day. And I explained on Tuesday that I am tired as all get out. So thoughts are just turning to soup in my brain, apparently.
Thoughts are hard. That's okay. It's fine for thoughts to be hard sometimes. Usually it's me that's like, I don't know, thoughts are hard to help keep me on task. So I'll move us along. So the next section is called Answer the Big Question. What am I making this mean? So on 231, she's talking about the idea of asking the question, what's perfect about this? I have to say that this specific idea, situation that she's telling the story and the exact question, I'm not in love with it. But I do think it's kind of that idea of like approaching things glass half full or finding the silver lining of things. And we all know in this podcast, I'm the silver lining person. Like I'm chronically a silver liner. So, I guess for me, if I like kind of shifted and look at it that way, like not the what's perfect about this, but the like, well, what good is going to come out of this? What can we learn from it, or what, how is, just that silver lining aspect of it. I'm like, okay, I can get behind that.
Yeah, I like it. I am not a silver lining person, but I do try to find certain things. It's become a joke over the years that I joke that I have good parking karma. And it kind of became a chicken or the egg thing where it was like, do I really have good parking karma? Or is it just that I celebrate so hardcore when I get a good parking space that it stands out more? And then on the days that I don't, I just don't even notice. And so that's always been the joke with my mom, because I'm always on the phone with my mom when I'm in the car. And I'll pull in, I'll be like, front row space, parking karma. And my mom just kind of cracks up. She's like, of course you did.
All right. So the next section is create your own coping routine. And this whole section is about this idea that, like, a lot of us work with our kids. And we've talked about it even in our own podcast and in the book club and all of that. This idea of like coping strategies, coping techniques, ways to help our kiddos. But how many of us actually like make sure that we really take the time to make sure we the adults, the grown-ups in the room, have our own coping routines and that we use them and we make sure our kiddos see us using them and that we're modeling that, right? So on page 233, she pulled out a quote, or I pulled out a quote where she's explaining it, and I really liked the just how succinct it was. She says a coping routine should be something you can do anywhere and anytime that doesn't require anyone else and that can move you from upset to calm. I thought that was just like a great little definition of, for people who are like, well, what is, I don't have time for that. Like, or, like I do this, or I talk to my best friend. Like, no, that's not actually a coping routine. That's probably good for your soul. And it probably does actually help you sort through some baggage or whatever's going on, but that's not a coping routine. You have to be able to do it anywhere, anytime, by yourself. And it moves you from upset to calm.
Yeah.
She had a list in here that I thought was pretty good. She's got quite a few lists in these sections, and it's that not exhaustive by any means, but good food for thought and a jumping off point. So I'm just going to read through them real quick. She's got squeezing a stress ball, deeply inhaling, holding for a count of 5 and slowly exhaling, meditating. No, thank you. My own side note. Disengaging from heightened situations by calmly leaving the room or walking away. I have to do that fairly often. I have a big temper and I have to be able to notice like I cannot actively de-escalate, but I can walk away and I will be back when I am calm. But when my kiddo was younger, I definitely would say to him often, like, I need to put myself in timeout. I'm going to go in my room. I'm going to calm down. I need some timeout to yeah. I'm going to own it. Reading a book, I do read a book a lot for like calming down and recentering, calling a lifeline, listening to a favorite song. Never underestimate the power of music to shift a mood. That's so true, right? It's different songs for different things. And sometimes even just the radio when you really need, like to not think about it or worry about it. Doing a burst of exercise to burn off energy, such as jumping jacks or sit-ups. I like to play a game, but a mindless game, one of those like kind of like a Tetris or a number game, something like that, where it's something I'm focusing on and it doesn't matter. And it just helps bring my mind into focus and lets all of those like raging things happening in my body settle.
We joke because Tetris really stresses me out, not in the beginning, but once it hits like 80,000, which is pretty funny because my youngest, who's got raging ADHD, plays Tetris, and I do not know, it's that ability to hyperfocus, right? It's that skill. His high score, I think, is somewhere in the 14 millions, and which is some of the top in the world. That's like, literally world-class Tetris level playing. And by about 80,000, I can start feeling like the angst building in it because it's just going too fast. Right. And I'm like, and he will literally play games that go 6-7 hours. Like he'll pause them sometimes and then go back to it or whatever. If he has stuff to do or needs to eat or something, go to the bathroom. But yeah, I mean, he'll do that. And so it's like a joke between us where I'm like, too stressful. And he cracks up laughing at me because he thrives on that dopamine rush of like working that fast and placing. And I'm like, oh my gosh. The other day we were on a plane and he was at like 8 million, which isn't near his high score. But he had gotten to the point where he cleared it all the way down to the bottom at 8 million. I'm like, I can't even fathom. Cannot. I'd have a heart attack. You'd have to pick me up off the floor. But Tetris, I can, not Tetris, solitaire. I can do that. That's my speed. That's not so stressful for me.
Yeah. I play one of those block games where it's not like timed, right? You get to do it at your own speed and you just move things around and fit them together.
Much better.
Yeah, exactly. The
I don't need that kind of
also,
anxiety.
exactly. The timing would also stress me out. That would not be a good coping strategy for me.
No. So then this last section is called Design a Reset Ritual, which she talks about doing the work, right? Making a special, kind of what we just talked about, but specifically laying it out. What is that going to look like? And how are you going to be able to shift into that and call upon it when you need to? And she gives some examples for that. I'll just read a couple. Listening to a specific song, a nightly bath with candles and incense. I shared that ever since the inauguration, when the shit really hit the fan, I've been doing show tunes in the shower, and it has really helped my mental health. It's still a basket case, but it's better. Starting the day with yoga or meditation. I don't do anything early in the day. If I was going to do yoga, it would be like 9 or 10 at night. Taking the dog for a walk, that's a big one for me. And that's a huge reset for me because we have a dog who smiles. Some dogs smile and some dogs don't. We have one who smiles. And there's that thing, like she'll just look back and like she's so smiley and she's like, I am having the best time ever. Are you having the best time ever? You know? And like, there's no way to stay stressed or upset when she's looking at you and she's just like, I am loving our time together. Thank you. So I do find that quite helpful. And then she ends this section with a start now box. And the start now box is just the little like action steps to put this tilt into place. And it says, create a personal energy management plan and commit to using it when interacting with your child during difficult moments and situations. Makes sense. I like it. I'm all about it.
Yeah. All right. So we have one more tilt to cover. But before we get to that, did you know we have a Buy Me account? Did you know that we have a Buy Me a Coffee account? Please don't buy me. So yeah, it's a quick, simple way to just say thank you to your favorite content creators, whether they're creating on Instagram or IG or they're podcasting or doing a blog or a newsletter, whatever it is. It just says, you know, I see all of the work that you're putting in and I appreciate it. I appreciate what you're doing and that you're showing up consistently. The fact of the matter is most of your content creators aren't really making very much money doing what they're doing, if they're making any at all and covering their cost and all that jazz. It starts super low as like a single one-time $5 gift. That's this idea of like, you bought me a coffee in the coffee line kind of thing. And it can go up from there. But we, you know, and all of your other favorite content creators, like we just really appreciate the support. So if you're looking for a way to be like, yeah, you know, I just want to make someone's day. All you have to do, you can go directly to Buy Me a Coffee, or you can type in the Google search bar, Buy Me a Coffee, Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. You'll show up right on our account. It's super easy. And yeah, it just makes us feel awesome. So thank you. All right. So that brings us to Tilt 16, which is titled Show Up and Live in the Present. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a self-explanatory one. It's fairly short, I think. The first section in this chapter, kind of in this tilt, is titled The Problem with Not Being Present. And so on page 237, she kind of starts off by explaining this, like those tasks that we do on autopilot, like brushing our teeth or making coffee, loading the dishwasher. Heck, I know sometimes like it'll even happen with commuting somewhere, you know, like a drive that you do all the time and suddenly you're like home and you're like, it's kind of scary that
it is. I've totally done it.
You know, like, yeah, I think anyone who's done like the same drive back and forth over and over, and you're like, oh my gosh, I was like kind of checked out and like, thank God everything went fine. But like the idea in this tilt is, you know, the idea, we don't want this autopilot to spill over into our life and our time and our interaction with our kids. And of course, it's going to happen sometimes. We're people. Like, no, we're not going to sit here and make you feel guilty for the fact that occasionally you have to autopilot time with your kids. You know, sometimes you have to autopilot parenting. That's okay. That's the reality. But, you know, trying to shift that and, yeah, just be more aware and intentional.
Mm-hmm. I got busted for some autopilot stuff when my youngest kiddo was even younger, because he was a talker. There's that question on the ADHD assessment that asks like, behaves as if driven by a motor. And I was like, what is the highest possible number that I can give this assessment, right? And so when he was younger, it was really intense. And I mean, he would just talk and talk and talk and talk at a speed that was just astronomical. And we'd be in the car and I'd be driving in traffic and I'd be stressed from the traffic and I'd be trying to, you know, keep an eye on the road and all this kind of, and he would just be going and going and going. And usually he was much younger. He was really, really little. So it was usually very nonsensical stuff, but it was just important to him. And I would just have these interjections. They'd be like, yeah, that sounds great. And I just kind of had those on also on autopilot. And one time we were driving And all of a sudden, and I did one of my like, yeah, that sounds great. And he goes, really? We can do that? And I was like, oh my God, what did I just commit to? Are we going to space? I mean, it could have been anything, right? Are we going to explore the Mariana Trench? Like, what the hell did I just commit to? But then I couldn't back up and be like, hold on, what? Because then he would know I wasn't listening. It was a really bad moment for me. So totally got busted for it.
Yeah. I mean, I have that too. And especially these days, it's complicated, the whole thing. But that like, it's hard, especially when they're younger. My kiddo is older now, but there are definitely times that I have to be like, I'm sorry. I know you want to talk to me about this thing, but it's pretty trafficky right now. And like, there's a lot of, I have to be able to focus on this.
Yeah.
Or I don't know where we're going. This is a new place for me to go. So I can't listen to you and also listen to the navigation and make sure I get the right exits and turns and all of that. I'm sorry. We're going to have to revisit this later.
Listen, dude, I'm at the age where I turn down the radio so I can see better. So we're going to need to put a pin in that.
Okay. Second day, I was like, oh my gosh, I have officially reached the point where I have to turn the lights on more to be able to read. I remember when my mom would do that to me and I would be like, oh my, stop. I can see just fine. And for a few years now, my husband has been doing the like, I think he needs, like, I should turn the light on for him to read. He needs more light to be able to read. And I'm like, he's fine. So he's going to stress his eyes out. It's going to be, I'm like, he's fine. He's comfortable. If he needs more light, he will manage more light. And then I officially reached that point. I was like, oh, yeah. Yeah. We're both that old now. All right. So the next section, actually, this is another one of those. The next section is actually called present moment awareness. And neither one of us had any interesting comments in that section. So we'll just move on to the next section after that, called intentionally showing up every day. So on 239, I have a quote. She says, every morning I take a moment and write out my intention for the day. Now, we all know that I'm like, nah, dog. Like, that's not happening over here. But I do agree with the general idea of being present and showing up intentionally, right? Like those things matter. And to kind of get yourself in that mind frame or that mindset, I'm not going to be making an intention. I'm not writing out my daily intention. But yeah, I like the idea.
I did too. I know for me, sometimes when I've struggled in the past, I've used alarms on my phone where I'll set an hourly alarm all day long to just kind of bring me back. Because for me, just doing it in the morning is not nearly enough, right? I get so sucked into my head and I spiral and I'm so anxious that I would need to do it way more often because this is something that I super duper struggle with. My brain is always off spiraling about something else. And I really struggle to be present. And I feel like, I don't know if it's the perimenopause or what, but I feel like it's happening more now where the kids will be like, we talked about this. And I'm like, we did. And I feel bad. Now, mind you, all of my kids also have horrendous memory issues due to neurodivergence. So they're not offended, I don't think, or taking it personally. Cause I'll just be like, you guys, I'm so sorry. I totally don't remember that conversation. But yeah, I would need it more than just in the morning for me. But I might try it because this is something I could definitely improve upon.
Okay. I have talked about this before in other episodes and other instances, both in book club and our general podcast. I generally dislike the idea of setting intentions or things like this because for me, I'm a bit of a perfectionist and it feels like just another way that I'm inevitably going to fail from time to time. You know, like an intention, I know an intention is like a goal, but I generally attain my goals. And so I like to keep things less goal oriented and more of like a general what we're trying to approach or what we're working towards. That way, if we don't get there, it's not a failure. And it's just a difference in, you know, kind of like how you set it or whatever. But if you're listening and you have those same kinds of things, no, you're not alone, right?
Right.
Struggles. And then she continues on just on the next page, on page 240. She's got a good list of possible intentions, things that other people have shared with her. I thought it was a kind of like a nice list to just get you thinking about things. So she's got, you might set an intention to take deep breaths in difficult moments, Respond with peace and love, not anger. Notice the little things. Be compassionate and curious. Set firm personal boundaries. Have more patience and understanding. Remember that my child has a right to feel overwhelmed. Listen and connect more. Practice empathy. So if this is something that you're looking to do and you want to do, those might be some nice ones to start with and think about.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not really my jam, but a more, like the way you're trying to approach things, not necessarily intention setting.
Mm-hmm. Then she's got create your own rituals is the next section. And I just thought it was interesting because I do like most of what she says in this section, or at least the core message that's here. But it's interesting because she starts off with the fact that it says, by now we've all heard about the many benefits of the whole family sitting down to meals together. And then she goes into a whole thing about why it's beneficial and this, that, and the other thing. And the really interesting thing is we gave up family dinner a number of years ago. And oh my gosh, did I struggle with letting it go. And so much so to the point that I was making it happen long past when it probably should have. And it was becoming a source of stress and frustration for everybody because my kids all tend to have activities that happen in and around that time. And as they get older and become teenagers, they're out, right? I mean, the last 2 nights they've left around dinner time and they're not back until 11:30, something like that. And so I would prepare a meal and then it would be like, oh, but we're leaving early to go to this thing because we told so-and-so we would meet up and drop something off. And it was like, well, don't I wish I had freaking known that because I made a chicken dish. And it was just constantly creating issues. And so it was funny because I talked to my mom about it, who I've said before is kind of my parenting partner. And my mom was like, yeah, that's super important for people who don't see their kids all day long. She's like, you are with your kids all day long. You travel with your kids extensively. You guys are with each other 24/7 so often that if you're not sitting down to dinner, it's really not the end of the world because you have so many other points of connection that people who have office jobs or whose kids go to school do not have. And so that helped me finally let go of that without feeling guilty. But I just thought it was interesting that that was the initial piece of advice.
Yeah. Well, and we have talked about that before. In my family, we do almost always have dinner together, but in large part, that's because my husband works, and he does work from home most of the time, but he is locked away in his office. We don't really see him. We definitely don't connect or chat with him about things. And so that kind of going to one of the earlier things that we talked about in this episode, right? That break between work and now family time. And we only get a couple of hours of his time in the evening before he goes back to work because of the fact that he works with international groups. And so, finding that time, I think the core piece is how you make sure you find the time to connect, whether that's around a meal or if you're carving that time out somewhere else or doing something else regularly, right? For me in this section, the part that I picked up on was that she points out that it needs to be something that's screen free. And if you're reading this and you saw that and you were like, I felt like it was a bit judgy for a variety of reasons, right? For all kinds of different things. Maybe don't include screen time in all of your points of connection. But, screens, especially with older kids, they don't need to be a bad thing. You can connect around TV shows or documentaries or movies or a chat and sending memes or, there's lots of ways to connect and it can absolutely involve screens. It can be gaming, especially with younger kiddos. There's lots of ways. Again, maybe don't make it every point of connection. I can totally get behind that, but occasionally it's fine. So don't feel like if you're like, well, our best thing is that we play Minecraft. I don't know. I don't play any of these things, but if that's what you do and you talk about it and you're able to share and connect that way, that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about that when Miss Devon, who's a video game teacher online, and she talked about using gaming in your schooling and things like that. And they have a family Minecraft server. We don't play Minecraft either, so I don't have a complete understanding of how that all works. But she said they love it. They're all working on stuff together and chatting and doing all, and it's just her core family. And then I think her brother. And so it's nice. I mean, we have History Channel is coming out with a Sitting Bull docuseries on May 27th. We can't wait. That will be our thing. Like we will all sit down and do that. when A Small Light came out on Disney Plus a couple of years ago, which was a drama about Meet Geis, who was one of the helpers for Anne Frank's family. And we were watching it as it came out, so we couldn't binge watch it. We had to wait each week for episodes like the olden days. And that was our thing. It came out like on Monday or Tuesday. And that was the thing. Like everybody knew, keep that night free. And I would make dinner and we would bring our dinner to the sofa. And we would sit and watch it. We were excited for that every single week. It was a great point of connection for us. So I totally agree with that.
Nice. All right. So the next section is called Look for the Bright Spots Every Day. Neither one of us actually pulled anything out of that, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Look for the bright spots in every day. And then we get to the last one in this tilt. So it's called Give Your Child All of You. And I like the first thing that I had with this is like, I'm not even sure about this title and some of the concept in here, only because I feel like there's all of this out there, like make sure you're doing self-care. You need to make sure you put yourself first. Okay, fine. So I'm putting myself first. And then now there's all of this stuff out there, like parents, they put their children above their marriage, and that's not a good thing. You need to put your marriage first and then your children. That way you can properly parent and take care of your children. I'm like, okay, so I'm putting myself first, but then I'm also putting my marriage first. And now I'm supposed to put my kids first. And like, how many first places do you get? You know, and like, yeah.
And we wonder why the lead parent, whoever that is in your family, always feels stressed and exhausted. Gee, I wonder. It's not working out for you. Yeah. Yeah. I do love, though, this chapter had my favorite line from this entire book, and it's the only thing that stuck with me from in succinct, exact words. I mean, the concept stuck with me from the last time we had read this years ago, but this line I have used more times than I can tell you. Is she was talking to somebody who has a high stress job, and she was asking this woman how she balances it with her kids and whatever. And the woman says, there's no heart in the cooler, meaning she's not involved in life and death decisions in the way a surgeon prepping for an organ transplant would be. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have used that more times than I can tell you when I was working at my last contract role. And, you know, we'd be feeling frazzled or behind, or it just ebbs and flows, right? And sometimes the workload would get higher. And I'd be like, you know what? I'm not going to worry about this. Me, of all people, not worried about something. And I'd be like, only because Debbie Reber told me there's no heart in the cooler. And so I kind of owned that and was like, yeah, none of this matters. I mean, it does help that I worked in corporate America for 10 years and saw just how insignificant and unimportant every employee basically is within a company. If I got hit by a bus on my lunch hour, they would have replaced me by the next morning. So, you know, I have that mentality too, where it's like, they don't care as much as they tell you, oh, you're so integral and you're so important and you do such a great job. They do not care. They would totally shit can you so fast just to save like 5 cents. So I have that too, where when it's work related, especially, I'm like, there's no heart in the cooler. This does not make or break. This is not life or death. I'm not going to stress myself and prioritize this over my kids. So I love that line.
Yeah, I remember that line, and I have used it some with my husband. It does not work. So if you try using it on someone that you're close to and they're like, yeah, but I can still lose my job if I don't get this perfect and everything matters, yeah, you might find yourself there.
I mean, that is true. I've never been the one responsible for paying our mortgage. So I do get that. So that's never been my role. And you and I are both, I think it's fair to classify. I know I'm married to a workaholic. Would you classify your husband the same?
Yeah, I'm really excited when he works less than 12 hours a day. So
yeah.
Workaholic.
Yeah. So I think, you know, I enjoy doing a good job and taking pride in what I do, but I would not classify myself as a workaholic in the way that I sit back and watch my husband and just be like, oh, dear Lord. So,
yeah. So in the same section, just towards the end, she is sharing this story. It's, if you're in the actual real book, it's on in the printed book, not the real book, but in the hard copy book. On 244, she's talking about a bad day with her son, Asher, and how she realized that she had been like just really caught up in her own work and other things and not giving him the time and focus that he needed. And because of that right there, they had just spiraled and things were bad. And it was bedtime, but she still went up and was like, you want to go for a walk with me? And they went out and they went to the park and they talked and they connected and they were out like for another 2 hours, even though he'd been almost ready for bed. And for me, it was just kind of one of those, a good reminder, right? That sometimes we hold to these like, oh, it's bedtime and we can try again tomorrow, or we can this or that. And sometimes that's what you need to do. I definitely, if I've had a really big conflict, I need a sleep. And it can be a nap, it can be an overnight sleep, but like, it doesn't matter how much I want to come back and be okay and move on. Until I've slept, it's not going to happen, right? Like my body needs that for a reset. But sometimes you need to just be like, you know what? Bedtime doesn't matter so much, or this class is not as important. Like we're going to scrap that and we're going to go for a walk. We're going to go have some ice cream. We're going to go get a cold soda, whatever it is. But like, to just break that and reconnect and make that reset possible for your relationship, not for one of you, not for the other of you, but for you together and for the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. We did that. It was actually do you remember earlier last year when there was that whole time frame where the aurora borealis was super visible across these huge swaths of the United States? It was going much further south. So we were living in South Carolina and supposedly we were going to be able to see it. And people were posting these epic photos, but apparently they had super duper cameras because we couldn't see shit. But anyway, it was the week that we had made the decision to sell everything, to put our house on the market, to get rid of everything. And it was a really intense week in our house, which was like, we are going to blow up our entire lives and move to a new country and all this kind of stuff. And so that night we were out, we were doing the reset where we took the dog for a walk because that was always a super helpful one. And while we were out, I was saying, oh, hey, I saw online, blah, blah, blah. Like, you guys want to drive to the beach? Which for us in South Carolina was a decent drive. It was like 45 minutes to an hour. And like, let's go. And we were there. We had the best time. We laughed so hard. The kids came home filthy. We didn't see shit in the sky, but we had the best time ever. And it was just so worth it. It was what we all needed, because after that week, we really just needed to hit the reset button and go laugh and just be silly.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, a lot of times when things are the most stressful, it feels like you can't possibly take any time out, but taking the time out actually makes it manageable. And more than manageable, it means that you can start again in a much better place.
That was
no matter how
helpful.
hard it feels. Yeah. All right. So that brings us to the end of this tilt. All the tilts always end with a start now box. So this box, it's supposed to be a quick, easy lift. I think it mostly is. She says, create a routine for setting your parenting intention every single morning. We all know I'm not going to. And reflecting on 3 bright spots at the end of each day. Again, probably not going to do that, but the idea of like a bright spot, right? Like taking the time to make sure that each day, I don't know if you ever did this in your house, Meagan, but we used to do a high and a low, and everyone in the family kind of at the end of the day had to share a high and a low. We did it during our family dinner for many years. We don't as much now, but that idea of like just taking the time to, make sure that you realize, like, even on the bad days, the best things that happened. So yeah, I liked it.
I didn't have a start now in my book. It was like, and it was weird because I was reading and I was like, that's so random. There's no start now. Just completely missing from the Kindle. So I enjoyed hearing it from you because I had no idea what it was. And I thought it was so odd that there wasn't one, and I was going to remark on it. And then when I came in and saw your notes and you had a start now box, I was like, I got gypped. So for random. Yeah. So look at us getting our 2 tilts in and in a reasonable time. We're doing good.
We didn't try 3.
I know, right? Next week is our final week of this book. Super excited. It's been an amazing read, but it'll also be nice to wrap it up and move on to something else, which is always fun too, to open a new chapter. So before we wrap up for the day, we just wanted to pop out a quick reminder that we create unit studies, and they are pretty amazing, if I do say so myself. We put a lot of time and energy into them. They are for all ages. They are filled with book recommendations, video recommendations, hands-on activities, writing assignments. They're all different. So sometimes there's cooking involved. Sometimes there's art involved. Sometimes it's a crossword puzzle. I mean, there's so much in them. They're really, really robust. We even have a guide in there on how to use a unit study. So if you're newer to homeschooling or you've just never used a unit study and you're like, I wouldn't even know what to do with this thing, there's a link in there to a video tutorial from the two of us explaining how we would each use a unit study. You can cherry pick activities from them. You can do the whole thing soup to nuts. It can be an addition to your regularly scheduled programming. It can be your sole focus for whatever period of time you set forth to accomplish it. I mean, they're super flexible. So they are a perk for our Patreon members. You just automatically get it every month. You don't have to do anything extra. It just shows up in your inbox. If you would like to purchase them a la carte, they are available on Teachers Pay Teachers. They're a little bit less expensive for our Patreon members as subscribers. There's links to both Teachers Pay Teachers and Patreon in our show notes here. If you decide to head over to Patreon, we've got different levels of support over there. Everything from thanks for the content. I enjoy your episodes. That's awesome. We've got a free level where you'll get updates and fun insights and things like that. Then we have our level where you get unit studies. We have even higher levels that are VIP and all access tiers where we have live meetings and we talk about neurodivergent homeschooling. We have a social that happens every month. So there's all kinds of stuff over there. So there's tons of stuff over on Patreon, and it's just a really nice community. There's chats that go on over there where you can pop in and ask a question and people will chime in and offer advice. So it's a lovely environment. We would love to welcome you over there.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And so that wraps us up for today. Hopefully you got something from it. Our book discussion of this book will wrap up next week. Like we said, we're on our last 2 tilts. So we hope you come back and join us to wrap up this book. And then the week after that, so a couple weeks out, we will start on our new book, The Beliefs book. We'll make sure to put a picture on social media and various places so you can make sure you've got the right book. And yeah, in the meantime, happy homeschooling.
Have a great day.